Okay, well, I have been back from my big Arctic adventure for a little while now, and I'm basically still working at getting out the first video, and I wanted to take a second while I'm working on that just to give a little update on this Three Sisters garden. You saw us plant this. Tori and I planted this garden when I got back from the Dog River, which is a Lake Superior tributary. That was in early June, I think. So we planted here June 1st, put in a little walkway, a little bridge. Put in some pollinators, and I planted my Three Sisters gardens as the main focus here, which is corn, beans, and squash. And they're doing well. I got back from the Arctic and it had just blown up, which is super exciting. Before we went up to our new off-grid cabin for a week, we put in 2 drip irrigation systems here, and they have been the saving grace. Tori's been busy with work. The local daycare shut down, so she's been solo parenting all while I was away. And really all she had to do was fill these big rain barrels, because this is a solar powered off-grid system, and there's 2 of them, and they're drip irrigation systems. So we put it in before we went to our cabin, came back, we're delighted to see that it's working. And then I went away for just over 3 weeks and came back and it had blown up. I did some more clearing of trees just to let the sun in. I cut the tops off some tag alders there because some of the squash plants weren't getting enough sun, but some of them have just blown up. So if it keeps going like this, we're gonna have a lot of squash. And the corn is doing well, the beans are doing well as well. And Three Sisters garden essentially is corn, beans, and squash, but we have some tomatoes that have snuck in here that were probably in the compost that I just let be. And then outside of that, I have some carrots growing, some watermelon, which isn't doing too good, and then we had potatoes and onions, which got eaten by the local wildlife. Anyways, yeah, a lot of beetles on it this year is one thing I noticed. I don't see a lot of insect damage, but I've been squishing those beetles as I go through. Yeah, of course we have 2 small apple trees. I think this is like their 4th year. So I think they're the ones that grow big, as in, 15 feet high or so. And I think they're going to not give us any fruit for maybe another 3-4 years. If you get the dwarf ones, they give you fruit faster. But it's good to see that they're doing well. Apple trees don't typically do well at our latitude because we are fairly far north. Anyways, yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about Three Sisters garden. So indigenous people on Turtle Island and in North America for many years have been growing the Three Sisters, and even right in this area, they're a traditional food. Corn was actually and Three Sisters again is corn, beans, and squash, and in this case pole beans. You don't want to get bush beans. And these plants don't actually really grow here natively, so you can harvest the seeds and replant, but they don't regrow every year. And corn itself, actually just through human selective breeding, if that's the word, is the size that you see it now, and it originated in present day Mexico as basically a grass seed size, and was just through First Nations trade made it all the way up to the Great Lakes and to our area right here. So that's pretty cool. And one of the reasons that it's called the Three Sisters, because they all grow well together. So you have winter squash is the type of squash that works well. And first you plant the corn, you let it grow 4 to 6 inches. Then you plant the beans, and that way the beans have something to grow up. So they grow up and they will attach to the corn and use the corn as a pole essentially. So you can see the beans have grown right up to the tops of my corn plant. They've wrapped around, and in other years, and I'm hopefully, if all goes well this year too, we'll be literally picking beans off the very tops of these corn plants, which is really cool. And these beans grow about that big. And then winter squash is delicious. You can leave it on the plant much later in the season, whereas corn, you're harvesting latest probably, into mid-September sort of thing. Squash can also last a lot longer once it's harvested too, which is one of the great things. And it's so delicious with a little real maple syrup, some cinnamon and butter. You can make it like a dessert almost, or just put a little bit. So it's one of our favorite foods. And of course we love corn too, and beans too. And all those different plants offer something different to your body in nutrients, but they also help each other as they're growing. The squash spreads along the ground and it creates shade, so water doesn't evaporate from the soil. It also creates shade, so it prevents the growing of as many weeds, so not as many weeds, which is great. And the corn provides a pole for the beans to grow up, and then the beans, they take nitrogen out of the air and they store it in their roots, and when those beans rot the next season, they replenish the nitrogen in the soil that the corn is robbing from it. So the plants not only help your body, they not only help each other as they're growing, but they also take different things from the soil and support each other on the soil level too, which is pretty amazing. It took me a couple years to get things dialed in with my Three Sisters garden, but I done really well with it. Tori and I have done really well with it the last couple years. It's just some interesting things about corn. They're called ears because there's two of them. So on each corn plant, you get ears. And as soon as you start seeing those little hairs grow up, that you'll see at the top of a cob of corn before you husk it, you know that the corn has started to form. But these are wind pollinators. So at the very top, like you see up here, the wind will cause almost like a dust to fall, and that will fall on top of those hairs. And each one of those little hairs, I don't know what the actual word for them is, it's not hair. At the end of each one of those hairs is actually a corn kernel. And that dust will fall on the hairs and will begin the growing of the kernels on the cob. Sometimes you'll peel a cob and you'll see a couple kernels missing, maybe a patch with a bunch of kernels. Well, that is an area where the pollen didn't land on the hair. So, you can kind of help it along a bit by kind of shaking them a bit when they're ready. But that's just one really interesting thing about it. I've also grown some sugar snap peas here. They do climb too, but not as aggressively. They're really delicious, but they don't do as well in the Three Sisters garden. I think they're just not aggressive enough to climb up the corn, but they do work as well. So we're going to be having some sugar snap peas too. So yeah, really excited about that, and just thought it would be cool to share a couple things about our Three Sisters garden. One thing I also did was I made sure I fertilized. This is all organic, an organic garden here. So I made sure that I fertilized it this year. We used blood meal, which is actually a byproduct of the slaughterhouse. It's sort of an animal protein that rots. We use smelt. I put a smelt under the corn seeds. You can go back and look at my previous video, including Big Water Trout Magic. I'll put a link here, and you can see that process as well at the end of that video. Also, when we catch smelt, we'll just, ones that we don't get around to eating, we'll just basically rot in the soil. And then I'll buy cow manure from the store as well, and I'll mix all that in. I'll mulch in as much of the dead plants, and then we keep compost here. We don't get a ton of it each year, but a solid big wheelbarrow full, and that works well too. And then the pollinators as well, attracting them with the flowers helps. With the corn and the squash and the beans, we're going to have a good amount of food that we can freeze and eat well into winter. Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm going to be away, which is super sad. Probably by the time we get back from the Yukon, whatever's left on the corn stalks might be past its prime, and we could save those and dry those as seeds if the animals haven't gotten to them. But I'm actually going to get my mom to stay up here, and she's going to help with harvesting what needs to be harvested and keeping the rain barrels full with the hose. Rain barrels also naturally fill with rain, but they really need to be placed under an eaves trough to actually fill up. So when it rains a ton, those rain barrels stay full, but if it rains a ton, the garden doesn't really need to be watered anyway. So they do need to be refilled once a week, but it's a lot easier when you're gone to get friends or family to come over and refill those. And if you're gone for a week to 10 days, you can just refill them before you leave and your garden will be fine when you get back. And like I was saying, it's a lot easier to get a friend or a neighbor to refill your rain barrels than it is to get them to water your entire garden every day. They only need to refill them once a week. So yeah, they've been just the saving grace, and really the irrigation system has allowed us to balance these homesteading type activities. I know this is like, you know, a joke compared to like a real homestead farm, like John and Jenny Klassen that we met in Glenora and in northern BC, what they have going on or anything. But it's an awesome hobby, and it does provide us with some food. And really it just gives you that, it teaches you a skill. Apparently people that vegetable garden live longer. So it gives you some exercise, gets me outside in the mornings on days where I might be doing long days of video editing and stuff like that. And it just makes you feel good. It really connects you with nature, with the land, teaches you an understanding of something, and it just feels good when you are eating the food and providing nourishment with the food that you grew yourself. Even though maybe at the end of the day, considering all the different gardening supplies, you're probably paying more, at least in the first few years of growing your garden. You're probably paying more than if you did just go to the store, but there's more nutrients in the food and it tastes better. So this food that we're growing, this corn, this squash, these beans have more flavor and more nutrients than most vegetables that you're going to buy in a farm field that they've been farming for many, many years. So that's just something cool to think about. So I think it's totally worth it. Anyways, I think that's about it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I know that this vegetable gardening and homesteading type content is not the mainstay of my channel. People like my expeditionary trips, my solo stuff in remote places, my family trips. People are really liking my new off-grid cabin adventures as well. But you know, let me know if you'd like to see a little bit more of this type of content too. And I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the info on Three Sisters and on corn. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also you can check out my Instagram at JB Adventurer and Jim Baird Adventurer on Facebook. I post photos and other updates and stuff like that, other little videos, garden updates and whatnot that you won't see on YouTube too. So check it out, and really appreciate everyone's support. Stay tuned because I'm going to have what are two epic back-to-back trips, the Arctic and the Yukon. It's going to be the best content you've ever seen on my channel. So I'm looking really forward to sharing it with everybody. Have a great day.